Hello everybody, this is Hans. Today I'm going to teach you how to tie my crane teaser. This is a crane fly larva pattern, and with the way I distribute the weight on the hook shank, it always rides hook point up, so it's going to lead to less snags. And there's a lot of weight incorporated into this, so it usually is going to provide enough weight in itself to get you down without the need of split shot. So to start out, we've got a 2302 TMC hook in the vise. This is a size 6. I'll do this in a 6, a 8, and if you need them real small, a 10, but 6 and 8's by far most common. We're going to use uni thread in 3/0 here, so pretty thick. You could get away with 6/0 if you wanted to use that. I really like the nice hefty 3/0. And then some 030 lead wire. First thing we're going to do here is get about 15 wraps of wire on the hook shank. So I put the wire on the near side, pinch it against the hook shank with my thumbnail, and start wrapping towards myself. 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, 15. Okay, and then you can wiggle that back and forth to break it off. Get all those wraps snugged up together and then tuck your little tag. Okay, now we want to position this so that the apps are right in between the hook point and the barb on the hook right here. Okay, these wraps end right in between those 2 points. Then we'll come in with our thread. I'm going to start it behind the lead wraps. Taking a few wraps here, jammed up against that lead. Okay, now we're going to get some thread out, take a big jump all the way in front of that lead, and then some wraps here. This is going to keep that lead in place so it doesn't slide back or forth on the hook shank for us. It also puts this little line of thread across that lead, so when we start wrapping on the lead, it's going to be less likely for our thread to get sucked in between that lead. Okay, so we'll jump back, try to make a pretty smooth transition, and then get a couple wraps on top of the lead here, and then smooth out the transition in the front, back, and then end right in about the middle of the lead. Now we're going to use 2 sticks of this 030 lead wire, and we're going to put those sticks on top of the hook shank. That's going to put a majority of the weight opposite of the eye, which is going to make this thing roll so it rides hook point up. Okay, now we want these 2 lead sticks to be we want it to overhang the lead by a couple millimeters on either side. So we're looking at about there. So I measure it out, and then I'll just pinch it with my thumb and wiggle, and that breaks that off. And then I can take that piece, line it up to the end of that piece of lead right there, find where they line up, and wiggle and break that off. So I've got my 2 sticks of lead here now. And those seem to be a little bit long, so I'm going to grab my trash scissors I keep around just for stuff like this and make that shorter. Okay, that looks great. So we'll go ahead and secure those on the top of the hook shank. Okay, and then wrap forward. Once we get up to the front here, we're going to tuck that lead down over those thread wraps we made there. Okay, and then build up a little bit of a ramp here. Okay, and then we'll work backwards. Tuck those lead wraps at the back downward. Get some good wraps on those. Okay, and that's the platform. Okay, now for the ribbing on this fly, we're going to be using, you can use 1X, 2X, 3X, 10 pound, 12 pound, something like that. The point is we want something thick and strong, so I'm using 2X here today. I'm going to grab that on the far side of the hook shank and wrap that down to where our thread stopped, which should be right just past the barb there. Okay. Then we'll move forward and just try to make sure everything's pretty smooth on the underbody here. So I'm just trying to make things a little neater. We'll come to the front and smooth that out a tad, making sure we leave plenty of room at the head to tie off. Alright, that looks good. Okay, and then work our thread back. Okay, now we're going to use for the body UV chewy skin. I like to do this in tan, brown, and olive. Tan and olive I use the most frequently. And if you take this chewy skin, we can make sure it's the proper width. Let me get that out of the way. By lining it up, and we want it to be as thick as the gap between the body and the hook point. And we're going to cut this at a very shallow angle. Okay, not much of an angle at all. So, see what I've done there? Okay, now there's a shiny side to this stuff and a dull side. I have the dull side facing me with the angled cut going towards the top. And I'm going to just grab this just by the tip of that UV chewy skin. Really not, you can see I've grabbed barely any of it there. Okay, couple nice tight wraps, and I'm going to stretch this. And then I'm going to work once everything's nice and smooth, work my thread up and behind the hook eye here. Now, we have this awkward kind of point here. What I'm going to do is I stretch this, and then I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I'm going to cut like this. Now I usually pull this stuff towards me. It makes it a lot easier to make this cut. I'm trying to do this so the camera can see. And try to smooth out that edge as best you can. Okay, this isn't vital, but it will make the body a little smoother overall. It's a lot easier when you pull the stuff towards you to make this cut. Alright, that'll do. That's good. Okay. Now, when we wrap, we want to make sure the dull side goes down, so you can see the dull side is here. If I were to turn it, the shiny side's over there. We want the shiny side up. So we're gonna, first wrap's gonna be a little bit of a stretching the material. Okay, make sure we cover all of the thread. And then we're gonna make a couple stretched wraps, and then we're gonna really loosen up on this stuff and not stretch it too much till we get back to the front, because that's gonna give us the best segmentation. Okay, so make that wrap, and then we're looking to cover half the material with each wrap. Okay, so you can see I am almost not stretching at all at this point. Okay, now what you can see here is you can see the part that's on the previous wrap and the part that's not. I want the edge of this chewy skin to line up with where it goes down because it's not on the previous wrap. Like that. We're going to proceed to do that all the way forward till we get to about the hook eye. Once we get up towards the hook eye, we are going to stretch this material. We're going to have to stretch it pretty hard, so we're going to start to stretch early with a couple wraps, and then we're going to stretch real hard right up by the eye. Okay, now is when I'm going to start stretching. So I'm going to kind of grab the material so it doesn't unravel on me, so I can switch where I'm grabbing it, and I'm going to start stretching pretty darn good here, continuing to align with that previous wrap. Okay, and then hold the stuff, nice another big stretch and a wrap, and then a big stretch at the end here. Now we're going to grab this with the thread. This is a reason I like this thick thread, because it really helps hold this material in place. This stuff is kind of funky to work with. It's gummy-like. Get some good wraps on that, pull that back, and then tuck a couple in right in front of it. Okay, now we're going to trim this stuff off real tight. Then do a little cleanup with our thread here. We're going to make a pretty big thread head on this. Okay, so I'm going to walk over all that stuff. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to start wrapping the tippet. So we want this tippet to basically touch the trailing edge of each wrap, and that's going to make this thing super durable. So it's going to go right on the trailing edge. And then we're just going to follow that the rest of the way up. You can see how it really bites into the material. Gives some really, really good looking segmentation. It also makes this thing really durable. Okay, and then on this last wrap, we'll come up, grab it with our thread, you can see some of our thread started to slip forward towards that hook eye. So I'm going to jam it backwards with my fingernail a little bit. And then take a couple wraps on top just to make sure nothing comes sliding forward again. Nice tight wraps here. This is all going to be glued real well too. That's great. Go ahead and trim off our tippet. Alright, and then we'll throw in a whip finish here. We can do one more right at the back of the head here. Just kind of make that taper look nice. Okay, and then we'll trim off the tippet. The final step is we're going to add some glue. Right before we do that though, you come in and you squish this stuff, and it'll kind of fix any of the imperfections that are going on, because it's really gummy and it'll grab onto itself. Okay, so we'll do that, and then final step is we're going to use this Loon soft head here and coat the entire body with the Loon soft head, which is really going to make it so that this doesn't get chewed up by trout teeth. Okay, so I'm just going to coat this entire thing. Thread wraps, I'm going to get it in the hook eye, that's fine, I'll clean that out. Coat it all real good. Any like super excess you can dab off with your finger, and then we'll go ahead and clear the eye. I just have an old feather here. I like to stick that through the eye of the hook. Pull a little bit. It's going to make sure it grabs all that glue and gets it cleared. We should be able to get our tippet through that nice and easy. And that is the crane teaser. Okay, I've given this just a few minutes to dry so that you guys can see what the finished product looks like. I like to do this in a size 6, 8, and 10 like I was saying. For the size 6, I use 030 lead wire. The size 8, I use 025. And then the size 10, I use 020 lead wire. That gives you 3 different weights that'll be excellent for many different water types. Tie yourself some up of these. I guarantee you're going to find them in a trout's mouth. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks.